Good morning. Thrilled to be here.
Good morning, Mr. Bruno. Good morning again, everybody. I'm excited to host this fireside chat about advancing launch innovation. I'm here with a leader who really needs no introduction. That's you, Tony Bruno, Chief Executive Officer of United Launch Alliance. Tory, thank you for being here.
My pleasure, Jason.
I know a lot of people want to hear from you today, so I'm just going to jump right in. And there's obviously a lot going on in the space industry, particularly around launch, with new startups cropping up alongside established providers. The Allied Market Research has projected the global space launch services market to reach $32 billion by 2027. But some economists are predicting a recession. If the US were to see that, what is the potential impact to the defense industrial base for both the established providers and new providers more dependent on outside capital to continue doing business?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think we're really looking at a sea state change. The good thing for our country's position right now is we do have a broader industrial base for launch, as well as technologies and spacecraft like your own capabilities at Millennium. And that's important going into the challenge that we are facing as a country. But in the past, we've been in an environment with low interest rates, meaning that cash was cheap, and an up economy, meaning it was plentiful, and therefore there was a lot of investment in a lot of different things. That will change. Now, it's not all bad, because in the environment we had before, there wasn't a lot of discipline around that investment. Anything that sounded great was something to be invested in. It led to a strategy of, well, invest in 10 interesting sounding companies. If one make it, you'll be fine. You'll trade on the valuations of the others as long as you don't wait too long to get out. What we'll see now with interest rates up in a recession is a lot more focus on what we invest in. So we won't see companies with dubious business models necessarily being invested in. Quite frankly, technologies that maybe defy some of the laws of physics. There's been a little bit of that. And instead, investors being very, very careful about the companies that can really make a difference, that understand their market and have technologies that change our country's capabilities in the marketplace. And I think that'll lead to more money being spent on the fewer companies like Millennium, like others that I keep track of, that can make that difference. And so, there may be some companies that it would have been great to have saved, but the ones that do get invested in are I think, gonna get a lot more attention and have a better chance of surviving.
It's really great insight. Now in the aftermath of the global pandemic, investors may be reluctant to fund space technologies, which of course impacts industry's ability to maintain space R&D. And speaking of R&D, I know ULA has a long, rich history of R&D that's yielded incredible innovation. For instance, the new Vulcan rocket is scheduled to launch later this year. So here's a two-part question. First, understanding proprietary information. What innovations can you share with us about the new vehicle? And then second, in the quest to maintain a viable business, there's a point where innovation and profitability meet. Given your experience, what is the best way to balance the two?
Yeah, sure. Well, I can talk a little bit about Vulcan. We're obviously very excited. New launch vehicles don't come along that often. This one has tremendous capabilities. We have continued to focus it on the very difficult, very complex, high energy orbits that the national security space marketplace needs. But with its architecture that we call dial-a-rocket, where we add or subtract propulsion elements, it's also able to reach down into the commercial marketplace and have success there, like we've seen with our very large Kuiper win, largest commercial largest launch contract ever, but also the largest commercial space contract ever. And we will continue to introduce new technologies as we go. We'll be focused primarily on the upper stage because there is so much more that can be done with transportation in space. We already have very high performance, very long duration, longest ever. We're going to move that from hours to many hours to days beyond. And that'll make a big difference for what can be done in space. There'll also be reuse. With the launch rate we have, that business case becomes unambiguous to close. So you'll see us pursuing those two fronts. Now, in terms of your other question, where you get into trouble with not innovating for the future or not thinking about the future is where you have a situation with activist investors or boards who lose the balance between near-term results and the long-term health of a company. And really what you have to do as a CEO and as a management team is also stay focused on understanding the long-term trends in the market and what it will take to continue to be a leader in your specific field, or if you're a new company, how to break in and make a difference, and then build a strategic plan that does that balance between near-term financial results, which are important if you understand them as a means to have long-term health and to invest in that innovative future technology. It can be tough. It depends a lot on the makeup of who your investors are, who is sitting on your board, but you just got to stick to it.
It's really good advice. Clearly, what you're doing at ULA is working, and a lot of lessons learned for others. So you mentioned Kuiper, probably the largest commercial launch deal we've seen in the industry. ULA has always been known as a defense contractor. Does this deal change the DNA of ULA at all?
Absolutely not. Half our manifest is still for the United States government. And what this really does for us is allow us to invest billions of dollars into our infrastructure, into our ability to launch at high rate. This all brings benefits to all of our customers, both the national security and the commercial marketplace. And honestly, Jason, to be honest with you, it is in our DNA. It's not something we could change in our culture, even if we wanted to. I get up in the morning every day to come in and do the things that we do to keep our country safe and to keep democracy alive in this world.
I got firsthand, I got to witness that firsthand when we were lucky enough to recently launch our first geo satellite wide field of view on Atlas V. So thank you for that ride. That was an amazing ride. And like that mission, we think that there needs to be a layered orbit approach to missions for many reasons. And an orbital regime we believe has incredible potential is cislunar. What do you see the keys to unlocking its economic potential?
Sure. Well, before I answer, just real quick, it was an honor to take you to space. I completely agree with your ideas about layered orbital domains and how we address these problems. It brings resilience to constellations, and it also, again, respects the laws of physics. There are things you can do in LEO with small satellites. There are things you can't. And by having a balanced and blended, sort of multi-layered, defense in depth kind of strategy to our capabilities in orbit is the right way to go. So I just want to give you that endorsement. In terms of cislunar and the economic potential of cislunar, which is vast, their multi-trillion-dollar economy of cislunar is possible. It's all about a practical transportation system, which is only possible with in situ propellants. In other words, the great discovery of our time that has gone largely unheralded, the presence of water on the moon, makes it possible to have the most energetic chemical propellants available already in space, not lifted from the deep gravity well of the Earth. Liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen, that's the key that unlocks all of this.
That's a good perspective. Thank you for that. And I resonate with all that. Hopefully industry will be able to help unlock all this potential as well. And with everything that's happening in the world today, space is playing a more important role than ever to keep our nation safe and our allies safe. Now, you recently wrote a stellar op-ed about deterring aggression in space. Would you mind taking a few moments to expand on what you feel should be considered to further our deterrence posture?
Yeah, I think if I were going to sort of zero in on one idea within that, it would be the environment we're in, where there is a lot of talk about how fast China is fielding capabilities. And that's engendering sort of a lot of fear and urgency and leading to talk of how to match, how to catch up. And the perspective I would offer is that I really don't think they're going that fast. What we're seeing happen rapidly is testing and deployment of capabilities they've been working on for 20 years. And I'm personally hard pressed to think of a single capability, including the maneuverable hypersonic threat down here on Earth, that I did not personally work on 20 years ago. And we set it down. We didn't finish these capabilities because we had a global war on terror to go prosecute. China picked them up. They have continued. And now we are seeing the fruit of that 20 years of their labor. Now, on the one hand, you might think, well, that's daunting. That's a 20-year lead. How do we possibly catch up? Those are old ideas that we had ourselves. The power of this country is innovation. We don't punish people for challenging the status quo and for offering new thoughts and new approaches. We reward and celebrate that. What we need to do is not to catch up. We need to leapfrog these capabilities. We need to introduce new technologies and new strategies that render them obsolete. And in that moment, wipe away their 20 years of effort and reset that clock. That's what we need to be focusing on.
Thank you for that. That inspires me, and I know it'll inspire the rest of my workforce as well. We resonate with what you said, leapfrogging our adversaries with American innovation. And that's something that I've seen ULA and companies like Millennium, we've been doing for decades. So thank you, Tory. Well, I want to thank you for sitting down with me today, Tory. Really appreciate listening to all your wisdom and all your great ideas. And thank you for everything you do for this nation.
Oh, thank you. It's kind of you to say, Jason. Likewise.
And that concludes our Advancing Launch Innovation discussion with Tony Bruno. Back to you, Dave and Scott.
Hello, gentlemen. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. I appreciate it.
It really was. Yeah. That was a great way to kick things off this morning.
It was. And by the way, you guys are clearly on military time. You guys do a great job. You don't dilly-dally. Yeah, right to the point. We appreciate that.
He's spot on. He understands it.
They have to be on time.
Yeah, for sure.
Really appreciate that. We're going to take about a 5-minute break. Jason, if you would, if you'll hold tight for about 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. We'll let everybody get their cup of coffee, etc. And Tory, I can't thank you enough. You've joined us several times in the past. It's always interesting. You're doing incredibly important work. Congratulations on all of your success.